Yes, finished. That was really good. That was really good. Really good. Oh well, time to see what the internet thinks about it. To me, with Masters of the Universe Revelation, it's a question of not if it was any good, but how good this cartoon series was going to be. Detractors will always hate, and the reaction right channels that didn't get the preview tapes were always careful to pick out those reviewer comments that suited the same repetitive right-wing narrative they've been peddling for months, regardless. Thousands of hours of story creating, animation, voice acting and hard graft from the artist, only to be shat upon about the argument of how Teela should wear a hairstyle. Spoiler alert, Teela certainly becomes one of the better aspects of the series, but also in some ways the not so good, in my opinion. Masters of the Universe Revelation is called this title for a reason, as the story arc focuses on a select few characters while the shadow of He-Man looms large throughout. All the key characters get a moment to shine and prove their prowess in combat, much like in the MCU, Avengers Starway. You're allowed some moments of coolness. Special mention to Powerhouse Animation Studio, which hits this one out of the park with excellent character drawing and backdrop art, remaining faithful to the Filmation version throughout. Now that I've seen what is billed as Part 1, consisting of 5 short 30-minute episodes, I can cut to the chase and say it mostly exceeded my expectations and delivered something quite unique and never seen before in the Masters of the Universe world. However, there are some distractions in the story, and Kevin Smith is keen to please, but some of the creative choices have left the entire series open to flack about virtue signalling and gender politics, which is really unfortunate. What we have is a new story arc which allows all kinds of characters to shine while keeping He-Man, the main protagonist, out of the spotlight, allowing characters like Teela, Prince Adam, Man-at-Arms to develop. Surprisingly, the story allows for unlikely characters to share more screen time, like Roboto and evil-lyn. The premise of the series was set months ago, and it should come to notice to everyone that the series is called Masters of the Universe, not He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Fans are being treated again by Netflix, hopefully in the not too distant future, which has a series specifically devoted to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but for now, Revelation is under my objective radar. Let's give a basic outline of the story, but beware this review does contain some spoilers. Firstly, what we are not getting is a constant Skeletor after Grayskull shtick. Instead, we had some really good plot twists in a story concept. He-Man actually stabs Skeletor for the first time ever. The basic premises just essentially involves Skeletor finally getting into Grayskull via deceitful means and almost consuming the power of Eternia, only for He-Man to sacrifice himself to save Eternia, a bet with the loss of all the magic and destroying the power sword in the process. Teela discovers He-Man's secret identity and she doesn't like the secrets being kept from her, and this leaves her to become a mercenary for some years after those events, and she's tagged along with Andra. There she bumps into evil-lyn and she explains to her that magic can be restored, and the three set out on this huge quest to make sure that Eternia gets reverted back to how it was. Teela finally joins a long line of combat-trained, kick-ass women characters like Xena, Sarah Connor, Black Widow and Cara Dune. The focus where we see a catastrophic state of Eternia through her eyes is well thought out, and her transformation from a staunch royalist captain to a cynical, wayward warrior trying to put the band together adds drama and friction, but much more about that later. And Rochelle Gellar gives a great performance that embodies Teela's character, which goes through the proverbial emotional ringer. However, there are character faults in her main motive to leave the Royal Guard. which was her lack of empathy towards the loss of He-Man and Prince Adam, blaming everyone for keeping a secret identity from her. This doesn't quite tie in with my understanding of Teela from Filmation. Understood there are certain people that deal with grief differently, but to me her reaction just wasn't credible enough, considering a stronger friendship, relationship she had with both Prince Adam and He-Man. Instead of trying to understand points of views from other people around her, she turned her back on everything and walked out. Just quite literally simple as that. And then led this kind of borderline non-moral job as a mercenary for hire for turning credits with Lieutenant Andra. It just seems a bit out of character to me. Again, this has left a character a target to haters, which is simply unfortunate. Against the comparison of He-Man, who is always a bit larger than life character anyway, I couldn't understand that why without He-Man there was a sense of excitement and wonder missing from the show. As for Teela's new look, it still doesn't bother me still, but it's been heavily politicised now and works against the character in some way. I haven't heard a suitable defence from Kevin Smith. To be blunt, he doesn't necessarily need to, but he has to stick by his decisions and speak out when needed. For some it's a change too far. As for the queer baiting, I don't see that in any scene really. I see a Batman and Robin style mentor and apprenticeship relationship between her and Lieutenant Andra. And we know that Kevin Smith is a massive Batman fan. Those who see lesbianism are usually those who deliberately think of it every time they see two women on screen, I guess. I hear the reactionary alt-right is going after arm muscle drawing now. Well, it's a cartoon for one thing. Secondly, it's called Masters of the Universe, a fictional fantastical world where all the male characters are muscle bound to the extreme, so why can't female characters have muscles? Seems logical. Women got to look like women in television and movies, or whatever that means, and funnily enough, it's usually the male critics spouting out this garbage. I have a problem about the power sword. Once Skeletor gets hold of the sword and says the immortal words, the sword doesn't become its own character anymore. It can be wielded by anybody. In the past, the sword has exhibited Excalibur-like properties where only a chosen one can use it. But now it seems like a bit of a free-for-all, and it opens up some questions about the significance of Prince Adam being a champion. I can partially understand Skeletor using it since the blade is made from two parts of Pre and Subaternia, but for me it opens up to others without any preconditions. Let's hope that the writers don't abuse this, as the Sword of Power is probably the only link for Prince Adam and what's unique about that character. On the subject of Skeletor, he was missing from the show, so it was easy to break the Filmation story formula from that point of view. However, we were treated to probably the best parts of the series with Scareglow and the subplot that gave us some of the very best that Motu I've seen definitely over the past few years. That the genius of putting together both magic users, evil-lyn and Orko, together in the show. Evil-lyn's really established herself as a highlight of part one. Evil-lyn's interactions with Orko are some of the best character moments the series has to offer. Let's have more evil-lyn, please. Orko's character was faithful to the original, and even his magic going wrong, which was fun. His death, although wasn't shown but implied, was touching. Part 2 is said to be to have more evil-lyn, which is a fantastic prospect given that she has her kind of this dual personality, which does show would she side with her friends, or would she follow orders from Skeletor like a subordinate as before? Is she going to betray Skeletor? So many questions for this superb new character setup, and it's worth exploring. Kevin Smith continues to live rent-free in the minds of the reactionary right YouTube channels, but for real fans of Motu, Revelation is precisely that, a revelation of what can be done with a 40-year-old IP, injecting new talent, artistry, passion and vision. To me, Masters of the Universe has a rich set of characters to explore, and by pushing He-Man a little more to the background, Kevin Smith has allowed some of my favourite characters to take some of the limelight. This is the correct approach in my opinion, and expanding the universe out was the right thing to do. I can't fully understand the fake rage over why some outrage channels supposedly think He-Man was actually killed off. The only reason I can think of is the fake rage to dog whistle fans into promoting some of the more dangerous ideologies, like supposedly lost masculinity, man versus women. I've even heard of some opinions where they think Mutter should go down a full gore, horrific route, which shows that just a complete lack of understanding about the series in general. The consensus I feel from outrage channels is that Masters of the Universe is not a place for strong female characters. The reaction would not have been the same if it was Man-at-Arms taking the central focus, for instance. Clearly, these people haven't taken notice of, say, the past 50 years of some sci-fi and fantasy narratives. Heroes can come back to life. All the deaths in part 1 are actually reversible through different ways, either by invoking magic or, in Roboto's case, simply a rebuild. I don't quite understand how naive some people get, especially when it comes to the same controversy that will happen to another superhero a few years back, Superman. This is fake rage, pure and simple. What some people fail to realise is that Teela is part of a much bigger story arc involving Grayskull and the Sorceress. Not all can be said without spoiling loads for part 2. She is destined to become more powerful and wiser than He-Man. Smith painted himself into a corner by insisting He-Man was featured in some capacity throughout all episodes. If only he'd been up front, but without spoiling the main story arc, of course. I do like the parts where Teela reminisces about her time with He-Man, and it's unfortunate that we can't see more of those incorporated into the episodes, and how she learns from her time with the hero and how instrumental he is to Eternia. This would be at least help new viewers understand the mythology and significance of He-Man, as at the end of the day, that's what Teela needs He-Man and the magic back in Eternia for, and that's what her quest is ultimately about. The critical question now seems to be what happens next. Judging by YouTube and its response, it's not been entirely favourable. Kevin Smith has said that fans will rally around this version, but it doesn't seem to be the case. There's a perception that people flat out hate it, while there's others who might like it. They're not motivated enough to maybe give it a good word online, or simply drowned out by the noise. If it's that difficult to put Mutter back in the mainstream, then I don't think Mattel will bother anytime soon, which is a shame. And as for the quartering, clownfish, geeks and gamers and the like, they just move on to harass the next victim or thing. And you know what? None of them will make Masters of the Universe Filmation retrospectives, because there were never really any real fans anyway. It's all about outrage and views for them. If they really cared about classic He-Man, then why haven't they done more to promote Filmation and 2000X versions? You go to their channels searching for Masters of the Universe, you rarely see past devoted content there. These channels have been around for years. This just makes me suspicious of the fact that they just jumped on this for the short-term views, but I don't really need to tell you that. Can't actually explain why they like the old series, mainly because most of them weren't even around during 83, or their arguments are wafer thin, which is mostly the case. For instance, armchair critics can't say there's a feminist agenda in play, since all the main female characters are flawed, and neither are they Mary Sues. Teela is quite literally wanting manly He-Man back. Evil-lyn is wanting her main man back, Skeletor. There's so much more potential, but I feel like Masters of the Universe Revelation has to deliver key elements in order to survive beyond Season 2. There's a lot riding on Part 2 at the moment, and Smith has to put everything on the table really, but he also needs to concentrate on what matters in the show. I'll be sure to update you on all the news regarding Part 2. I give Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1 4 out of 5 Crimson Stars. Thanks for watching, and be sure to leave a comment about what you think about Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1, whether you think it's bad or good, I don't mind. Remember to like and subscribe if you like my content.